From the obsidian pinnacle of the Emperor's flagship, I watched the tiny blue jewel spinning in silence, suspended in the black eternity of space. It should have been trembling. It should have known the weight of our dominion, the inevitability of submission. Yet Earth glimmered defiantly, a fragile spark of color against the void, utterly indifferent to the shadow of our fleet that blotted out its stars. Our emissaries, elegant and cold, transmitted the Emperor's decree: surrender, kneel, acknowledge the inevitability of our authority. We expected panic, we expected despair. Instead, there was nothing. Silence. Not ignorance, not delay, but a deliberate, measured quiet that gnawed at the edges of our certainty. Our sensors captured scattered transmissions, muted, anxious perhaps, but no cries for mercy, no entreaties, only the faint pulse of readiness. Humanity had heard us. Humanity had understood the threat, and yet it did not flinch. I studied their communications with a growing unease. Fleets, modest and fragmented, began to stir. Starports that should have crumbled under the mere shadow of our ships remained erect, bristling with activity, calculating, coordinating. And with every intercepted signal, a single, undeniable pattern emerged: determination. There was something in their stillness that made even the Emperor's admirals shift uneasily in their seats. It was not bravado, it was persistence. We had underestimated them. Every calculation, every model, every projection had labeled humans as insignificant, a short-lived flicker of life, destined for quick compliance. Yet now, the impossibility of their quiet defiance spread like a virus through our command. They were not pleading. They were not bargaining in desperation. They were watching, learning, preparing. I sensed it then, a tremor of something unfamiliar in the logic of the universe, a primal, almost irrational pulse emanating from this small world. Resilience. They were cultivating it, nurturing it, as if it were a weapon far deadlier than any plasma array or orbital bombardment. Across deserts, oceans, and cities, I imagined them readying themselves, not to surrender, not even to negotiate, but to endure, to fight, to rise against what should have been inevitable destruction. Even the Emperor, with centuries of conquest burning behind his eyes, paused as reports filtered in. He demanded obedience, demanded fear, demanded the sight of humans cowering beneath our might. And yet, the humans offered none. They did not bow. They did not scatter. They merely existed, stubbornly, defiantly, in face of an empire that had broken thousands of worlds before them. A quiet dread began to bloom among us, subtle but undeniable. Our sensors could measure their fleets, count their soldiers, track their cities, but how could we measure the indomitable spirit that radiated from every intercepted signal? Could a species so fragile, so small, truly defy an empire?
All logic, all projection, all known strategy said no. And yet, a deeper, irrational instinct whispered a warning. This species was not to be ignored. The Emperor's fist clenched on the obsidian armrest of his throne, his gaze locked on that blue sphere. They had issued a challenge none of us could yet comprehend. As our fleets loomed over their atmosphere, as the first probes skimmed the clouds, we waited. And in the silence, in the stillness of that blue world, we felt it. A pulse. Quiet, unyielding, impossibly alive. The first whisper of resistance. And in that whisper, the galaxy trembled. From the observation decks of our forward stations, we watched in disbelief as the humans revealed a facet of themselves no algorithm, no projection had ever anticipated. Their fleets, scattered, outdated, laughably outgunned, moved with an uncanny precision that defied our expectations. Ships that should have crumpled under the first wave of our plasma barrages instead danced through our fire with a chaotic grace, trading space for time, loss for advantage, as though the very chaos of battle were their ally. Starports we had marked for immediate occupation became fortresses of ingenuity. Entire planetary infrastructures had been repurposed overnight. Factories redesigned to manufacture improvised weaponry, transport hubs transformed into defensive bastions, and civilian districts converted into complex defensive networks. They sacrificed vessels, stations, even entire orbital platforms without despair, and each loss only sharpened their resolve. The humans were learning, evolving, adapting with a speed and fluidity that our most advanced predictive models could not match. Their commanders, young and untested by our standards, anticipated strikes we had not yet executed. Our sensors recorded their maneuvers as if they were foreseen before conception, a pre-natural intuition guiding every human action. Even more disconcerting was their psychological warfare. Entire populations rallied to the defense with no formal orders, transforming civilians into soldiers, engineers, medics, and tacticians in moments of crisis. The emotion driving them, hope, pride, and unquantifiable stubbornness, propelled them faster than any directive could. From my vantage point, I watched humans walk through fire and rubble, clutching one another, laughing at danger, orchestrating counterattacks that should have been catastrophes, but somehow were not. Scouts reported strange rituals, chants, symbols that seemed to ignite collective ferocity. Fear was absent, replaced by a raw, almost tangible will to endure and conquer. Their suffering became their weapon, their desperation their advantage. The battlefield itself transformed beneath their influence. Where we expected order, we found ingenuity. Where we expected chaos, we found purpose.
And for the first time, the idea began to spread through our fleets like a creeping shadow. Perhaps this species could not be contained. Perhaps they were something more than biology and instinct, something neither we nor our emperor had accounted for. Whispers began circulating among our admirals. The humans, so small, so seemingly fragile, had created an equation for war that no amount of firepower could solve. And as we calculated our next move, an unfamiliar tension gripped our command. If they could continue at this pace, adapting and overcoming with such relentless determination, what would be left of our fleets in a month, a week, a day? We had expected rebellion. We had expected desperation. What we did not expect was mastery of Defiance itself. And then, as our probes recorded yet another daring strike, a fleet vanishing into an asteroid field we had claimed as secure, the first true seed of fear took root. The humans were no longer reacting. They were dictating the rhythm of battle. And in the silence of space, I realized something chilling. The war had already begun to change, and the humans were leading the transformation. The humans' ingenuity surged beyond every expectation. From our observation platforms, we witnessed the seemingly impossible: wreckage of their own vessels, debris from destroyed colonies, and the very environment itself transformed into weapons against us. Asteroids once ignored now became supply caches, trap-laden fields or launch points for devastating attacks. Flooded plains, scorched deserts, and volcanic eruptions, disasters we had assumed would cripple them, were exploited as tactical advantages, converted into fortresses, ambush zones, and counteroffensive positions. Our calculations, once infallible, faltered before such adaptability. We deployed dread fleets, vessels of overwhelming power, expecting the humans to scatter, to collapse under the magnitude of our assault. And yet what we found was audacity bordering on recklessness. Entire colonies that should have been annihilated became strongholds, and in moments we could not anticipate, humans emerged from ruins with new weapons, new strategies, unflinching and alive. Engineers redesigned warships mid-battle, retrofitting disabled systems into lethal machines. Failed technologies, derided by our analysts as obsolete, became instruments of destruction. Even more unnerving were their leaders. Young, inexperienced by our standards, they made choices that appeared impulsive, irrational, or reckless. And yet, time and again, those decisions produced outcomes that baffled our generals. Entire squadrons were rerouted with no apparent coordination, only to strike with devastating efficiency. We attempted to discern patterns, to apply our logic, to anticipate their moves, but the humans did not act by logic alone. They acted by instinct, by a willpower that resisted quantification, by a resilience that defied analysis. Each skirmish, each battle, eroded the confidence of our forces. Small human victories, a single station held, a convoy ambushed, a fleet surviving against impossible odds, reverberated across our command. Psychological fear began to spread faster than actual destruction. Our fleets, vast and meticulously ordered, faced a phenomenon they could neither destroy nor predict:
a species that grew stronger under pressure, that rallied precisely when collapse seemed inevitable. Even our spies, the most seasoned and cynical of observers, whispered in hushed tones about the human spirit. "We have never encountered anything like this," one reported. It was true. The humans' influence extended beyond the battlefield. Their resilience reshaped our perception of conflict itself. Calculations failed, tactics faltered. Every expectation we had built on logic and precedent now demanded reconsideration. And in every corner of the galaxy, where once our forces had been certain of victory, doubt began to sprout like an insidious vine. From the bridge of our command fleet, I observed yet another human innovation. Orbital debris transformed into a kinetic storm that shredded 2 of our dread cruisers before our defenses could react. I realized with a chill that spread from sensor to sensor that we were no longer dictating the tempo of war. The humans were. The tide had turned, and we were being swept in a current we could neither anticipate nor resist. In that moment, I understood something terrifying. The humans did not merely survive adversity, they harnessed it, weaponized it, and became an unstoppable force precisely when we expected them to break. And as our fleet regrouped, our admirals exchanging hurried commands tinged with panic, one undeniable truth crystallized. The war was no longer ours to control, and in the distance, I saw the faint flicker of their next maneuver, brilliant and unpredictable. Whatever it was, it would challenge everything we believed about victory and leave us scrambling to survive. We watched, helpless in a way we had never experienced before, as humans paid the price for their defiance. Entire cities crumbled under orbital bombardments, their towering structures reduced to ash and steel. Fleets, meticulously constructed and cherished, vanished in the cold void, obliterated by the calculated fury of our dread weapons. Oceans boiled under incendiary barrages, rivers ran black with fire. Our scanners recorded wave after wave of destruction, and yet the humans did not despair. Even amidst devastation, they did not falter. From the occupied territories, our surveillance drones returned images we could scarcely comprehend. Civilians, women, men, even children, acted with a deliberate courage that defied calculation. They shielded soldiers, carrying the wounded to safety through streets lined with ruin.
Scientists, laboratories reduced to rubble around them, improvised weapons under the rain of debris, their hands trembling yet unyielding. Children rigged defense mechanisms from wreckage, converting rubble and scrap into traps, barriers, and crude but effective weapons. Entire communities formed human shields, not from ignorance, not from instinctual fear, but from a conscious, unshakable resolve to protect one another, to protect the living from the suffocating shadow of our empire. Every transmission our sensors intercepted revealed the same paradox. Grief and fear etched deeply across human faces, yet intertwined with a stubborn refusal to kneel. Mourning became action, loss became momentum. Each casualty did not diminish their resolve, it ignited it. Reports from battlefields and destroyed colonies described funerals turned into rallies of courage, shrines of remembrance serving as centers of strategy, memorials doubling as command posts. They ritualized their suffering, encoded it into their operations, transforming tragedy into inspiration. Even our most precise assassination campaigns, designed to decapitate leadership and scatter morale, failed spectacularly. Humans did not just endure, they adapted, evolved in real time, converting their suffering into a forge of strategy we could neither predict nor counter. Our analysts, the finest minds in the Emperor's command, attempted to quantify this phenomenon. Data streams, simulations, and probability matrices failed again and again. Every human defeat seemed to seed an exponential increase in ingenuity and resolve. Each loss, each burned city, each fallen soldier acted like fuel for the living. The humans seemed to measure success not by territory gained or enemies destroyed, but by survival itself, by the number of hearts still beating, by the persistence of spirit under impossible pressure. Their victories were counted not in conquest, but in continuation. And in this they revealed the true weapon we had overlooked, the unquantifiable force of unbroken will. We began to see patterns in their behaviors, patterns that terrified us more than any fleet maneuver or technological breakthrough could. The rituals, the songs, the stories of fallen heroes, the memorials to towns lost, these were not merely cultural artifacts. They were tactical tools, mechanisms for resilience. Our spies, seasoned observers with centuries of experience, whispered reports of humans standing atop ruins and declaring in voices that carried across cities, "We endure, we will not yield."
And then, astonishingly, they rose. Engineers rebuilt weapons under bombardment. Medics healed soldiers amidst exploding artillery. Entire populations marched as one, undeterred, unfaltering. Even our predictive models, capable of mapping any known species' behavior under duress, collapsed before the humans' dynamic adaptability.
They did not simply respond to threats. They anticipated them with instinct sharpened by experience, trauma, and something beyond logic, an intangible, almost irrational determination. The humans converted every disaster into opportunity, every setback into strategy, every act of violence against them into a lesson for the next engagement. The concept of surrender, so intrinsic to every other species we had conquered, did not exist for them. And in their suffering, there was beauty, horrifying in its implications. The more we crushed, the more they rose. Cities that should have been ghost towns were repurposed as strategic nodes. Fleets that should have been annihilated returned with innovations that stunned even our most advanced analysts. Where we had predicted collapse, there was resurgence. Where we had anticipated despair, there was defiance. And as we monitored their evolution, I felt a fear unlike any other, a fear not of strength, but of inevitability. The Emperor, seated in the obsidian throne room aboard his flagship, began to sense it too. Reports arrived not as intelligence, but as harbingers of doubt. Fleets were no longer merely failing, they were being outmaneuvered by sheer tenacity. Territories, previously assumed lost, re-emerged under human command. Patterns emerged that suggested humans were learning not just from victory or defeat, but from survival itself. Every time we attempted to crush them, they adapted faster than we could calculate. Every strategic gain we thought permanent, they turned it into the foundation for their next strike. The humans had transformed suffering into resilience, and resilience into strategy. They measured not by conquest, but by their refusal to yield. The psychological calculus of war, the entire concept of domination, had been inverted by a species so small, so fragile in our eyes, that their persistence should have been inconsequential. Yet now, it was everything. And in the silence between battles, I began to hear it, not from our communications arrays, not from our scanners, but from the pulse of the planet itself, a rhythm of determination, synchronized across continents, echoing through every human heart. Survival, defiance, and unyielding will. The humans were no longer merely resisting, they were redefining the war on their terms. Even as the Emperor demanded faster annihilation, our dread fleets prepared for the next assault. A terrifying realization had taken root across the command. Victory might no longer be ours to claim. The humans had learned to endure, to evolve, and to strike in ways we could not anticipate. And in every loss we inflicted, we had forged something far more dangerous than any weapon we could deploy. The humans were not just surviving, they were becoming unstoppable. And as our fleets approached the ruins of yet another city, I saw movement amidst the devastation, a coordinated counterattack, born of loss, grief, and relentless will. The humans advanced again, and I realized the chilling truth. The cost of their resistance was not merely measured in death, it was measured in transformation. And in that moment, the war ceased to be ours alone, and the first seeds of genuine fear took root across the galaxy. For the first time, the humans abandoned the defensive posture that had frustrated us for months. From the edges of our observation grids, I watched them assemble, not in scattered desperation, but with terrifying precision. They struck first, quietly, surgically. Small strike teams, often in vessels far smaller than our own warships, penetrated fortresses we had deemed impenetrable. Command nodes went dark, communication arrays flickered into silence, supply chains collapsed under assaults that seemed almost instinctive, as if the humans were reading the exact pulse of our operations. They exploited terrain, gravity wells, asteroid fields, even the storms of gas giants to shield movements we would have detected in any other engagement. Physics became their ally, our own overconfidence their weapon. Entire sectors of our fleets vanished in catastrophes that defied calculation, ships detonating with precision-timed brilliance, turning destruction into opportunity.
The humans anticipated our responses with an intuition that our best algorithms could not model. Where we expected chaos, we found choreography. Where we expected panic, we found deliberate, unrelenting aggression. The audacity of their attacks spread fear faster than the damage they inflicted. Reports from surviving admirals, trembling as they spoke, described humans improvising with debris from ruined stations, converting abandoned warships into mobile artillery, turning catastrophic defeat into tactical triumphs. Another muttered that the humans' genius lay not in their technology, but in the creativity with which they applied it, an unpredictability so profound that no formation, no fleet disposition, no defense plan could fully account for it. From our observation platforms, we saw entire human colonies acting as coordinated nodes of counteroffense. Cities once reduced to rubble became launch points for orbital strikes. Subterranean tunnels, geological faults, and mountain ranges became traps for our advancing forces. Their ingenuity was relentless. Where our engineers expected rubble to hinder movement, humans used it to camouflage fleets or funnel our ships into ambushes. Where we expected surrender, they struck back with calculated vengeance. The human mind seemed to operate on a rhythm we could not anticipate, a pattern beyond prediction. It was improvisation elevated to a form of warfare, and the consequences were staggering. Fleets that had been considered invincible were annihilated in hours. Supply lines that had supported entire sectors of our forces collapsed overnight. Our generals, once confident in our superiority, now found themselves reacting, improvising, recalculating constantly, and even then, success was fleeting. Every victory we thought secure became temporary. Psychological effects multiplied. News of human audacity reverberated through the stars. Allied species, previously content to follow the Emperor's commands, reconsidered allegiance. Mercenary fleets withdrew, neutral systems reconsidered treaties, and spies reported entire colonies quietly supporting human efforts, inspired by what should have been an inconceivable display of strength. Across the galaxy, fear took root, not just fear of defeat, but fear of the humans themselves. They were no longer merely resisting, they were dictating terms. Even among our own soldiers, murmurs spread of unpredictability and dread. Generals debated strategy for hours, yet every plan faltered under the humans' improvisation. The humans, as far as our records could show, did not merely respond to opportunity, they created it. Every strike, every counterattack, every victory seemed to emerge from a force outside logic, instinct, willpower, and a collective determination that inspired their allies and terrified us in equal measure. From the Emperor's vantage point, disbelief became palpable. "Impossible," he muttered, watching entire battle groups vanish into human-engineered traps. Reports confirmed it. Humans were rewriting the calculus of warfare. No numerical advantage, no technological superiority, no fleet disposition could overcome the unpredictable calculus of their ingenuity. We could not outgun them, nor outmaneuver them, nor anticipate them. I recorded with growing unease as humans turned destruction into architecture. Stations we had bombarded to rubble were repurposed as launch platforms. Weapons we had destroyed were scavenged, rebuilt, enhanced with modifications that reflected ingenuity rather than raw resources. Every loss inflicted upon them became a foundation for the next assault. Entire fleets disappeared, only to return as innovations, unanticipated formations, makeshift artillery, even improvised electronic warfare systems that disrupted our communications before we realized what had happened. The humans' counteroffensive was not merely tactical, it was philosophical. They transformed the battlefield into a test of will, using fear, expectation, and overconfidence as tools against us. Our scouts reported civilians assisting in operations, soldiers innovating with civilian equipment, entire towns improvising intelligence networks under bombardment. Every act of destruction we inflicted became an instruction manual for their next maneuver, every setback a lesson in resilience. Even our spies admitted, in whispers that carried across command channels, that humanity had become an anomaly. "We can no longer model them," one muttered. "No plan accounts for their creativity. No algorithm predicts their next strike." The humans' victories reverberated far beyond the physical destruction of our fleets.
They shattered assumptions, rewrote doctrine, and instilled doubt across our forces. A psychological war unfolded faster than any engagement, as whispers of human ingenuity spread through command networks and councils. Planets that had been under our control reconsidered loyalty. Some species began offering covert support to the humans, and even our allies questioned whether compliance with the Emperor was worth the cost. The humans had become more than a military threat. They had become a galactic catalyst, reshaping strategy, perception, and fear itself. By the end of the first month of their counteroffensive, we had learned a truth that terrified even the most seasoned of our admirals. We could no longer predict outcomes. We could only react. And reaction, our scholars had quietly noted, was no longer sufficient. Reaction meant survival. Reaction meant desperation. Reaction meant waiting to be outmaneuvered, outthought, and outlasted. As our fleets regrouped and prepared for what we believed would be decisive retaliation, I watched from the observation platform as a human strike team infiltrated a heavily defended station we had deemed invulnerable. In minutes, communication networks collapsed, supply nodes were destroyed, and the station itself self-detonated, leaving our forces scrambling to respond. The sheer audacity, precision, and speed of the operation left our admirals silent, our fleets paralyzed by disbelief. And then, in the distance, the faint glimmer of new human ships appeared, moving not in flight but in formation, preparing for the next wave, already anticipating our next countermeasure. I felt for the first time the profound and undeniable truth. The humans were no longer reacting. They were dictating. The war had shifted. The galaxy had shifted. And we were being forced to follow their lead. The Emperor's summons echoed through the grand halls of the Galactic Council, a rare occasion where fear overwrote protocol. Usually composed, disciplined, and unwavering, the representatives of countless star systems filed into the chamber, their usual arrogance tempered by an unease that none had witnessed before. The humans, so small, so fragile, so utterly underestimated, had shattered the careful calculations of empires, armies, and centuries of assumed supremacy. Analysts hovered over projection arrays, recalculating and recalculating, but the numbers refused to conform. Human fleets continued to strike, appearing where no sensors predicted, surviving battles deemed unwinnable, and converting catastrophe into advantage with a creativity that defied comprehension. Generals, faces pale and strained, begged the Emperor for reinforcements, for strategies we had never deployed before, for measures to contain a species that should have been inconsequential.
Even prophets and seers, creatures long attuned to reading the currents of fate and warfare, murmured in hushed, fearful tones of the irrational fury of humans, a force that seemed guided by will rather than logic. From the Emperor's throne, I observed it all: the trembling whispers, the frantic debates, the frantic hands adjusting displays in vain attempts to model the humans' next move. Across the galaxy, once loyal systems questioned their allegiance. Merchant houses, long devoted to the Empire, considered support for humans. Subjugated species debated rebellion. The humans' influence had transcended the battlefield. It was psychological, philosophical, cosmic. Fear spread faster than fleets, faster than warships, infecting minds with the realization that no measure, no threat, no command could force humanity to yield. Even the Emperor, once absolute in authority, displayed a subtle tremor in command. His hand hovered over control arrays, hesitating for longer than protocol allowed. The reports from scouts and intelligence officers were unanimous. Humans were surviving assaults that should have annihilated them, striking with precision where least expected, and inspiring rebellion simply by enduring. Another, older, more experienced, muttered, "A species so small should not possess such power." The chamber, normally alive with debate, became a theater of silent dread. Scholars argued, generals demanded action, envoys pleaded for restraint, but beneath every word, beneath every command, lay the same undeniable truth. Humans had forced the galaxy into collective panic. Their resilience, ingenuity, and sheer unpredictability had rendered centuries of calculated supremacy irrelevant. From my vantage point on the Emperor's observation balcony, I glimpsed the humans below, not bowing, not broadcasting, not celebrating. They moved quietly, deliberately, as if aware that every eye was upon them, every fleet monitoring their defiance, every empire calculating their destruction. And yet they continued, unbroken, relentless. their persistence radiating across light years like a signal of warning. The Emperor's advisors whispered in trembling urgency. "Contain them," one said. "Strike harder," another urged. But none dared voice the unspoken fear. The humans could not be contained. They were small, yet they were immense. Fragile, yet unyielding. Outmatched, yet unbeatable in ways we could not quantify. Every strategy we considered crumbled under the reality of their existence. And in that silence, a chilling thought spread through the council chamber like a shadow. For the first time in millennia, the Emperor's authority was no longer absolute. A species weaker in every measurable way, smaller, slower, seemingly insignificant, had forced even the greatest powers to hesitate, to recalculate, to fear. The human spirit, intangible, unquantifiable, unstoppable, had rewritten the balance of power across the stars.
The council convened into whispered arguments, emergency sessions, and secret deliberations. Alliances frayed, loyalty wavered, and in every sector of the galaxy, systems began asking the same quiet question. If humanity could resist the Empire, what else could they endure? What else could they achieve? And while the galaxy panicked, the humans waited, silent, patient, watching, learning, preparing for the next strike that would once again render our calculations meaningless. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne, eyes narrowing, jaw tight. And in that moment, we all understood a truth that no simulation could ever capture. The humans were no longer just a threat. They were the unknown, the unpredictable, the uncontainable force that could unravel the entire order of the galaxy. And as the council descended into chaos, I realized with a growing icy dread that the next move would not be ours. The humans were already moving. The war reached its apex across 3 star systems, vast arenas of fire, debris, and shattered silence. From the observation decks of the Emperor's flagship, I witnessed the humans' final stand, and it was nothing like any scenario our calculations had allowed. Outnumbered by fleets 5 times their size, outgunned by artillery designed to pulverize entire planets, facing annihilation in every measurable way, the humans deployed every resource they possessed, every fleet, every weapon, every mind, and every ounce of will. And yet, we observed not panic, not chaos, but choreography. Their squadrons moved like extensions of a single organism, synchronized to a pulse beyond our comprehension. Ships anticipated strikes before our own tactical systems registered them. Counterattacks unfolded in layers, feints disguised as retreats, traps embedded in terrain, gravity wells, and asteroid belts. Every sacrificed vessel, every destroyed outpost was a deliberate calculation, each loss feeding the greater strategy. Cities became fortresses, forests, deserts, and mountains were transformed into labyrinths of defense and ambush. Even their most vulnerable colonies radiated a defiance so precise it mocked our arrogance. Our assault fleets, vast and overwhelming, collided with this extraordinary coordination, and the results were catastrophic for us. Entire battalions fell into traps we had not conceived. Orbital bombardments intended to break resistance were rendered useless by human countermeasures. Mines, improvised artillery, and electronic interference, often crafted from wreckage of their own ships, obliterated our formations with efficiency that was terrifying to behold. They converted desperation into an art form, transforming what should have been chaos into calculated devastation. The Emperor watched through our sensors, disbelief carved into his features. His fleet, his strategy, his centuries of experience, all of it unraveled before a species he had assumed weak, insignificant, and predictable.
And yet the humans did not falter. They did not plead. They did not scream for mercy. They endured. Every maneuver, every counterstrike, every sacrifice reinforced the pattern of defiance, creating an almost living network of resistance that spread across entire star systems. Our admirals, seasoned veterans of 1,000 wars, reported in shock. "It is not merely combat, it is orchestration," one said, voice tight with fear. "They anticipate loss and convert it into advantage," another muttered. Our communication networks buzzed with frantic coordination as we tried to adjust, to regroup, to survive. Every recalculation failed. Every plan collapsed. Every algorithm that had once promised certainty now served only to illustrate the futility of expectation. From the surfaces of contested planets, the humans' ingenuity became grotesquely beautiful. Cities that should have burned were transformed into launch platforms. Streets and tunnels became traps, minefields, and artillery emplacements. Civilians moved alongside soldiers, repairing weapons under bombardment, organizing logistics, and supplying information in real time. Even children, witnesses to the carnage, improvised defenses that our forces repeatedly underestimated. Every human heart beat in synchrony with the war effort, each pulse feeding the others, creating a rhythm of resistance that defied comprehension. We observed fleets vanish into asteroid belts, only to emerge unscathed, attacking from angles we had considered impossible. Supply lines, communications hubs, and orbital stations were rendered useless by strikes that combined technology, instinct, and improvisation. Where we expected panic, we found discipline. Where we expected retreat, we found audacity. Each human victory, small or large, carried a psychological weight heavier than any physical destruction. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. This species was not only surviving, they were thriving under fire, reshaping the very definition of warfare. Entire alien battalions, vast and meticulously trained, fell to human ingenuity. Traps embedded in planetary terrain, cloaked ambushes, and sudden unpredictable assaults shredded units that had never known defeat. The humans turned desperation into strategy, despair into opportunity, and annihilation into triumph. Every act of aggression against them became an opportunity for counterattack. Entire fleets we had relied upon as unshakable foundations of our empire were scattered, fractured, and decimated in ways that were almost ritualistic in their precision. Through the Emperor's sensors, I saw it all. Humans walking through ruins, standing amid fire and ruin, plotting their next maneuver with calm resolve. Not a single gesture betrayed fear. Not a single command betrayed panic. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, they remained unbroken, moving as though guided by a force beyond reason.
Their ships struck with precision, their defenses held with impossible coordination, and their innovations unfolded in real time, responding to threats before we could even calculate them. The psychological weight of their resistance became a force in itself. Across the galaxy, other species, long subjugated or allied with the Emperor, began to whisper of rebellion, doubt, and fear. Entire sectors that had once been obedient now watched, uncertain. The humans' impact had become more than military. It was cosmic, philosophical, a disruption of certainty itself. The Emperor's authority, absolute for centuries, wavered. Even the mightiest commanders, those who had never known hesitation, struggled to maintain order. The humans, in defiance of every metric, had become the singular anomaly, a species capable of dictating the rhythm of war across 3 entire star systems. And yet, even in victory, the humans did not celebrate. When the smoke cleared, when our fleets lay shattered, crippled, and fragmented across the void, the humans remained silent, unyielding, unbroken. Cities that had been under siege pulsed with quiet life. Ships that had survived drifted into formation. Every human heart beat with the same unquantifiable determination that had carried them through destruction after destruction. No fanfare, no triumphal cry, only the rhythm of endurance, the quiet testament of a species that refused to die. From our observation posts we could see it, a network of strategy, innovation, and resilience far surpassing any calculation we had made. Even our most advanced simulations could not reproduce what had occurred. The humans had taken annihilation and made it a scaffold for survival. Every loss had been a lesson, every sacrifice had been a strategy, and in that silence, the galaxy felt something unfamiliar: awe, fear, and the subtle realization that we were witnessing not merely survival, but transcendence. The Emperor's voice, low and tight, echoed across the bridge. "Impossible," he said, the word bitter and hollow. "No species should survive this." He leaned forward, eyes locked on the sensors, watching the final human formations spread across the systems. For the first time in centuries,
The Emperor felt the vulnerability of his dominion, and as the dust of battle settled, a singular, terrifying truth crystallized in every mind aboard the flagship and every observation post across the galaxy. The humans were not merely fighting, they were teaching. Every move, every sacrifice, every quiet, relentless act of endurance reshaped what it meant to survive. They had proven that no matter the odds, no matter the weapon, no matter the empire, a species unwilling to surrender could endure anything, overcome anything, and redefine the universe itself. The war had reached its climax. Our fleets lay broken, our plans in ruin, our authority fractured.
And the humans, they waited, silent, watchful, and unbroken, their hearts synchronized with the pulse of resistance, ready for whatever came next. And in that moment, I realized the unthinkable. The humans had not just survived, they had become unstoppable. The battles had ended. Entire fleets lay scattered across the void, crippled beyond immediate repair. Cities, once front lines of humanity's defiance, bore the scars of relentless assault. And yet, the humans did not celebrate. They did not issue proclamations of victory. They did not parade their dead or gloat at the shattered remnants of our fleets. Instead, they remained quiet, watchful, a presence that rippled through every sector of the galaxy, unspoken yet undeniable. From our observation posts, we recorded the subtle yet terrifying signs of their persistence. Fleets, though battered, repositioned strategically, hidden in asteroid belts and shadowed nebulae, lying in wait for contingencies we could not anticipate. Entire populations rebuilt with astonishing speed, repairing infrastructure, fortifying defenses, and redistributing resources in ways that defied comprehension. Cities that had been reduced to rubble rose again, stronger, better organized, almost as if the fire had refined rather than destroyed them. Entire planetary systems became coordinated bastions, their defenses layered, interlinked, and adaptive, suggesting foresight and planning on a scale that no empire could fully grasp. Their silence was the most unnerving weapon of all. No war cries, no broadcasts, no displays of triumph, just the quiet assurance that they endured, that they watched, and that they were prepared. From the Emperor's perspective, from the council chambers of allied species, from the observation stations that spanned the galaxy, the humans' restraint became a message in itself. It was a signal that said, we do not need to strike to assert our power. We only need to exist, unbroken, ready. Our scouts whispered of rituals, of human communities training in the aftermath of devastation, of fleets drilling and cities reorganizing with meticulous attention, as though each reconstruction was both practical and symbolic. Every act of survival was a lesson, a statement, a warning. Underestimate us again at your peril. The humans had demonstrated not just the ability to endure the impossible, but to transform it into strength. Every calamity they had faced had become a catalyst, every loss a seed for resilience. We began to understand, with growing unease, that this was the true power of humanity, not their ships, not their weapons, not even their strategies, but their indomitable will, their refusal to surrender, their capacity to endure beyond the imaginable, their ability to turn suffering into fortification, fear into defiance, and disadvantage into opportunity. These were not traits we could calculate or replicate. These were the tools of a species that refused to submit. Across the galaxy, the shadow of humanity spread without a single act of aggression. Fleets lay hidden, cities rebuilt, and planets fortified, but all without fanfare. Even in their quiet, humans were rewriting the rules of engagement, of survival, of existence itself. The galaxy learned what we had long underestimated. Resilience can be a weapon far deadlier than any laser array, a shield stronger than any armor, a force that outlasts any empire. From the Emperor's throne, the command center buzzed with uncertainty. Analysts recalculated endlessly, simulations failed repeatedly, and whispers of dread passed through every officer. The humans had not sought revenge. They had not sought conquest.
yet their presence alone reshaped the cosmos, a constant reminder that power is not always measured in dominance or destruction, but in endurance, in spirit, in refusal to yield. And in the stillness of space, as our observation arrays captured the silent rebuilding of worlds, the quiet patrol of surviving human fleets, and the rhythm of life resuming on scarred planets, we, observers, conquerors, witnesses, understood a truth that chilled and awed us alike. Humans do not merely survive, they endure, they adapt, they transform adversity into a force that reshapes the cosmos itself. The war was over, yet the shadow of humanity stretched across the stars, and it was a warning that no being, no empire, no species could ignore. The humans had endured, and they were ready, always ready. And somewhere in the quiet depths of the universe, I understood that the most dangerous force in existence was not the weapons they wielded, nor the fleets they commanded, but the unbreakable, unyielding, eternal spirit of a species that refused to die. The galaxy had seen the end of the war, but it had not seen the end of humanity.